Iran is now under a nationwide internet blackout as anti-government protests continue for a 13th straight day. This is one of the few videos that has emerged from the country overnight. The internet shutdown means current footage and information coming from inside is scarce. Internet tracking agency NetBlocks says the blackout has been in place for over 24 hours, and data shows connectivity is just 1% of usual levels. As the demonstrations grow, Iran's supreme leader is lashing out. And with me now is Negar Mortazavi, Senior Fellow at the Center for International Policy and host of the Iran podcast. Thanks for being with us today.
For having me.
Thank you. For many Canadians watching, they may lack understanding of what brought us to this moment. Can you give a sense of understanding about what led us here?
Sure. The protest started, essentially the spark of it was an austerity measure, an economic measure by the government of removing certain subsidies that would target a certain class of merchants. That's why the protest started in the form of strikes and closure of shops in the heart of Tehran's bazaar. But the underlying cause of this is not just economic or inflation or the high cost of living, the raising prices. It's also very political, as we see in the images and the signs people holding in the very radical chants against the entire establishment. It's essentially a show of dissent at the governance of the entirety of the governance, political, economic, social, cultural, even environmental situation of the country. But of course, the spark of it was an economic situation. The Iranian economy has not really worked for the middle classes, working classes, and it's just been getting worse over the years.
But speaking out against the administration and protesting may not come without consequence in Iran. What do you see as the next steps here?
Absolutely. We've seen the Iranian state essentially bring down an iron fist, very violent, deadly crackdown against rounds of protests in the past, most recently 2022, the Women Life Freedom Movement, and before that 2019 and other protests. This time around, I think at the beginning they tried a slightly different approach, the moderate president tried to do some outreach, meet with the leaders of the protests, say that we're listening to you, hearing your grievances. But I think that approach has changed, and just as early as yesterday, we saw with the internet cutoff and very violent images, a number of deaths and injuries have grown and are growing more, and it seems like a violent crackdown, a more violent crackdown, or essentially an iron fist maybe on their way, also coupling that with the remarks of the supreme leader.
But very hard to know what's going on when there is an internet blackout. So there could be a violent crackdown, but the world may be blind to what's going on inside. And I understand there are more protests planned for this evening. Is that what you're hearing?
Yes, it's been very difficult, but images are coming out slowly, and also eyewitness accounts. So what we heard from yesterday, images and also eyewitness accounts on the ground, was that protests grew to many cities and towns, in large cities, including the capital, Tehran. And they were big in numbers of people coming to the street. And also tonight, we're expecting to see if that number is going to grow. And it was met with a very violent and severe crackdown. So the reporting is coming out slow. That's one of the reasons the internet shutdown happens, to prevent mobilizing, to prevent sort of these images and reporting come out. But nevertheless, people seem to be persisting despite the violence and the potential deadly ramifications of their protests.
What would it take for these protests to end?
Well, there are two very different paths. One would be like past protests, that the state uses absolute violence, deadly violence, and essentially cracks down without really addressing the grievances of the protesters, and which we've seen these grievances have been piling up. So even if they crack down on this one round, the grievances the powder keg essentially will again erupt and show in the form of protests in the future. And a wild card, I would say here, would also be foreign intervention. We don't know if President Trump's threats are going to really materialize. Are these just threats? Is there reality behind it? We also know that the Israeli prime minister might be eyeing more military attacks on Iran. So if there's a foreign military strike and attack combined with this internal dissent, that can really change the course of this, not necessarily in favor of the protesters and of the Iranian people, but it can certainly put double pressure from two different directions on the state.
Negar Mortazavi, we appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Negar Mortazavi, host of the Iran podcast.